Look, there's a lot of stupidity involved, let's face it. Maybe mine was a little stupidity. I kept this quiet so long, but I had an oath with the general that I wasn't going to talk till he died 3 years ago. And also other people involved. And like I told you before, I don't reveal them unless they want to come forward themselves. But we should have done more. We could have done a little more in this. This wasn't even my primary job. Because I was involved in budget, I was involved in visiting industry, I was project officer at anti-missile missile, and I was first one that had to work on arming of helicopters. The first one was I talked to the French. They put one inside the helicopters in the desert, a 20mm cannon. But they warned me, if you hold the trigger down, it'll flip the helicopter. So I had to do a lot of other jobs, and really this wasn't the primary job. Von Neumann, you've heard of John von Neumann? He was working on an artificial intelligence. I had his file, Project Rainbow. I read the file, interesting, artificial intelligence. What did I do with it? I put it back in the file and forgot it. And yet I had the organization and everything to do something, and I didn't.
Do you remember Project Bluebook?
Sure did. No, yes. Oh, Bluebook, sure.
Yeah. I mean, was that just a complete, what was that?
I'm going to ask you the same thing. What was it? I don't know. I don't even know why they did it. I started to read it one day. I figured I'm wasting my time. I put it this. This is a nothing. What's the matter? Can't they do better than this? I wouldn't even read the thing. So yeah, this is the thing. That's the answer. Why they do this latest thing? I can't understand that. Can't even comprehend why they do that.
Who directed that?
It had to be the higher-ups in the Air Force. It had to be, and Department of Defense. It's, if you know the organization of the, you have to know there's a Secretary of the Air Force. There's a Secretary. There's a direct, like Colin. He's head of defense, head of this. But there's superiors like that they call the shots. They say what to release. So I blame their superiors. It wasn't the ordinary Air Force officer that did that. I know a lot of them. I have good friends there. Fought with them in Korea. These boys would never do anything like that. They had more sense. Somebody up on top made the decision. Why? I can't even comprehend it. I always tell you, if I'd have done anything like that, Trudeau would have thrown me out of the top window of the Pentagon. Why they do it? They don't have to do it. It's not necessary. Tell these kids what they want to hear. That's easier and better for them. Nobody calls them silly.
But isn't that going to open up a floodgate of questions? We're not alone. It's going
They
to
don't have
impact on religion.
Nah. Who you going to approach to answer? The thing is, if you go to the Pentagon to try to get an answer or try to follow this up, who are you going to go to? And will they see you? And then they'll hit you in the face like when I challenged CIA one time, when they challenged something that I wrote. So I called their deputy director at the White House. I had a little bit of authority then. Told them, come on over. Bring all your evidence with you. Come on over. Set a meeting up right at the White House. They sent 6 people over. So I told them, since I am running this show and I'm at the White House, National Security Council, before we get started, I'll lay down some ground rules. These are the ground rules. Number 1, don't pull source on me. You can't reveal the source. I'll make you name the source. But I'll only do that because I know you have no sources in that area. Number 2, don't pull national security on me. I know more about national security than all of you put together. So let's rule that out. Now let's rule the best one out that you pull on. Save it for Congress. They don't know any better. Don't use a top secret stamp on me to save to cover your rear, because I know better. I have all the clearances. I'll make you name it, what it is top secret, and then you have a problem if you tell me some lies that it's top secret only, because you only do that to cover your rear. So don't pull that on me. Save it for Congress, who doesn't know any better. Now let's start, gentlemen. There was no meeting that broke up. They couldn't pull their cliches on me because I happen to be above them. And I could challenge them on it and make them talk. Then they called me up and they said, well, it's a joint British-American report that you questioned. Good, bring the limeys with you. They never did show up, none of them. So after, see, this is what you be up against. Who are you going to see? The moment you go see somebody, they say, oh, we can't tell you, it's top secret. What are you going to do? You have to walk out.
You have questions?
You see?
Sure I do, but I want to make an
You see,
Yeah,
so you see what you're up against.
Yeah.
You know, who are you going to go to? Let's say you'd have come to me when I was in there. I'd tell you, well, I can't release anything. Go to the PA, Public Relations Officer. He releases to the public, not me. And I was right. I had no authority to release anything. So you see how the government operates? How they can, you say, you should go there and answer. Who are you going to go to? Even with the experience I had being on the top of the government all the years, I couldn't tell you who to go see.
Wouldn't they be relinquishing their power, though, by saying, yes, we recovered something in 50 years, and yes, we've been lying to you for the last 50 years?
Look.
People are going to lose all their trust in the government.
Yeah.
Already
Haven't
losing
they?
their trust.
You answered your own behalf.
No, if you'd come in when I was in the Army and I'd have told you something like this, I wouldn't be relinquishing my power. When I was down here at White Sands, I was the commander. Anything that I said to you would relinquish my power. I was the authority there. I was the top commander of the area. Already one general told me, Lieutenant General, and we were colonels together. And he's already said, when I had the team investigating the alignment of atoms, this general said, bigger in Los Alamos, and I was head of the team, and I had German scientists. He said, sure. He said, I know all about that. He said, I was right there in the front of the general's office.
There's quite a few other gentlemen that we
You
know
see
of.
all these acknowledgments?
We're not going to mention their names because they have to do it on their own.
Well, you know, in the intelligence business, and even newsmen, you know, like you have a code. If somebody tells you something, or you don't reveal their name unless they give you permission to. And that's the code of the newspaper. That was the code of the Army, intelligence. Because if you do, you're out of business. Nobody will talk to you anymore. You see, this, all these acknowledgments here, I wrote to every one of these military units. Everyone answered me.
Yep. Just wanted to ask you, in summary, because I've basically run over the chain of events which occurred after Roswell to discuss what happened at Roswell.
Yeah.
And of course, why they kept it from the public. Now it's
Yeah.
about it.
All right, well, I'll go through that story. Now, I wasn't at Roswell in 47. 47, I just come back from Italy. I'd been chief of security intelligence in Rome. And in the intelligence business, I was trained really by the British. I was an MI-19. So when I came back, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas. I was stationed there. It was a veterinarian post and all. And we still had horses. And I was instructor at the intelligence school, and we had an aggressor force So one night, I was a post-duty officer. Post-duty officer means that I was in control. For that night, I was the one that checked all the guards, checked all security areas. In fact, checked the whole post. I was the duty officer that night. And I went to the veterinarian section, and a sergeant I knew very well was sergeant of the guard that night. I told him, Sarge, how's everything around here? And he said, fine, sir. I told him, you know, they told me to be careful to watch this area because you have a sense of something sensitive here. He said, you want to see it, sir? I told him, yes, let's go look. And I knew this sergeant he was a master sergeant. I went back, and there was 5 crates there, like 5 or 6, I think it was 5. I lifted one up, and here's this body there and floating in fluid. And I looked at it about 10, 15 seconds, not much more than that. So I put it back down and said, Sarge, come on, get out of here now. I don't want to get you in trouble. Because I'm the duty officer, I can go around, walk around here. But you might get in trouble for coming back. Just come on, let's go, come out with me. So we went out, and I told him, where did it come from, Sarge? He said, well, 5 trucks are coming through here from an airfield in New Mexico, and they're heading for Wright-Patterson Air Force. Now, in those days, you know, there weren't all these big roads now. In those days, Route 40 was about the only cross-country route. And the route that they took was Route 40, going through Fort Riley, Kansas, and then up to Wright-Patterson Air Force. And I said, well, stay away from her, Sergeant. I don't want you to get in any trouble. I told him I can walk around and see. So, and I started to figure, what was that? First, I thought it was a child, because it was small. then I looked at this head and all, right away, and this was only happened in a matter of seconds. Then I put the end back down, and the head was different, the arms were spindly, the body it was gray. So right at that moment, I figured, I don't know what this thing is. So like in intelligence business, I just better put it in the back of my head here and wait till maybe in the future I get corroboration so I can evaluate what it is. So I promptly forgot about it. 10 years later, I was down there, commanded the range in New Mexico, in White Sands, the Army missile firing range, in northern, right near Trinity site, my headquarters was. So my own radar started picking up items going 3,000 to 4,000 miles an hour in this area. I had pencil beam radars which locked on the target. And the boys told me at about 3,000 or 4,000 miles an hour, quick acceleration, they break the lock. And that was one of the best radars we had during the time. So every time that would happen, once I notified our headquarters, they said, oh, forget it, we're not interested. So I figured I won't tell them anything anymore. So every time that would happen, I'd tell the boys, bring me the tapes. Because all my computers and my firing had a tape which gave the whole firing sequence, and then we could check it after if anything went wrong, see? So I'd tell them, deliver the tapes to me personally, and I'd look them over, and yet what they told me was true. Then I left and went to Germany, and I started picking up the same things in Germany, 3,000 to 4,000 miles over flying Germany. Again, the pencil beam radar would lock on, and all the ones that would lock would break, because our radars really weren't that good. But they were so powerful that if you came to my area, my flight, to take photographs, and even the German newspapermen used to, I'd tell them, now gentlemen, you can take all the pictures you want, but if you have flash bulbs in your pocket, please take them out, because the moment I turn the radars on, they'll pop in your pocket, all that energy's in them. So I told them, I don't want anybody to get hurt. So they would do it, and then I told them, once you take them out of your pocket, I can turn the radars on for you, see how they work. So there I started, and information I started to get was that there was something flying in the air. Like I figured, well, maybe these are the flying saucers like the Roswell crashes. Then from there, of course, I went to, well, just before that, I was 4 years at the White House, and I kept getting reports there. But they were just reports. I mean, and they weren't actually cast in any sense that you put them in a file and keep them all together. They just were sporadic reports that came through. Of course, I had all the clearances, so I'd get them. Even code reports I used to get and all. And I did get one time a report that NSA was getting signals from space, which were not just space noise or you know, or unscrambled or something you couldn't read. They were really very perfect and looked like something was guiding them. There was a real message, but we were never able to decode it. This was a very coordinated message. It wasn't space noise or jam or jumble mumble or anything like that, or just noise coming. It was a pattern. So the evaluation, maybe it might come from outer space, some beings, and I got that report when I was at the White House, because I had the NSA clearances and all. So then I sort of forgot about it. I went to Germany, took a battalion over there at the time. Then I came back. I was with the General 7th Army. Then when I came back, General Trudeau pulled me in. He had reorganized research and development from a secondary mission logistics to a very compact, good unit, about 3,000 officers. It wasn't too compact. And then I went. He made, first, when I reported in, I was a special assistant. Then he created the Foreign Technology Division about a week later and put me in charge of it. There I started getting the topsy reports. I started getting other crash reports, the artifacts I got. And by that time I established, and I'd visited the site here a couple times. My first visit to the site in '57 was one of my sergeants knocked over highway signs. He got drunk, and the state police picked him up. But when they pick up a soldier like that, they deliver him back to me, you know, he tells them the unit. And they brought him to me. There were 2 state troopers. So we started, I told them, why don't you come to lunch? It was around noontime. So I took them to my mess hall, and we had lunch with them. Then I told them, come on down range, we're going to have a missile firing in the Blurvet. So they did. And then we started to talk about Roswell. I told them, I'd like to see the site. They said, well, we'll take you, come on. So here the 2 state troopers and me, and I was in uniform, and drove me out here, and the roads weren't like we saw the other day, the cargo, they were almost past then. So that's the first visit I made to the site by 2 state troopers. Then I was taken out later years. The land agent took me out, and he gave me contour maps and all, the exact site. But when I came to research and development, which was 14 years later, by the way, I inherited all these artifacts, and I inherited the reports, autopsy reports from Walter Reed Hospital. Now, Walter Reed, there was a laboratory there, which was our laboratory, and we financed. That's who did the autopsies for us. But we didn't leave any copies to them. All copies had to come back to us, because after all, it was our lab. We financed it all. So there I started getting indication, proof that a crash really happened here. Of course, then I kept it quiet for 35 years. I had an oath with the general, and I didn't reveal the names of people. Even he criticized me. He said, 35 years you kept a secret, didn't even tell your family. I thought, why should I tell anybody? No, the general told me, he said, Phil, let's keep it secret. When I die, though, I relieve you of my oath. 3 years ago, the general died. And I started putting all this on paper. My grandchildren, he said, what'd you do during the war? I said, I better leave them a legacy. Really, I had no intention of ever writing a book, being in the military like that. But finally it evolved and gradually moved up. I started to write, and it evolved into this finally. So that's the background, my background, and as I say, I had the evidence that a crash did happen here. And where did it happen? The site that I went to the other day was CNN. Because that's the one, I've been to that site now, that's the 5th time I've been there. And it's always the same site. In fact, I went out there one time, I came here to visit, and it was snowing when I went out there. It wasn't like the heat now. And I went also, the land agent took me way out to the Braswell Ranch. That was the ranch where all the things fell apart. And when you came in, I was reading that book, and I was reading about Wilbur Smith. Wilbur Smith is really the man that first put in my mind when nuclear binding coming apart on things. And he was a magnetic, really, he was a genius, and the Canadian government really treated him bad. And then I was supposed to go to his laboratory visiting because the general told me when it was on. The general told him, Smith, he said, you and the colonel have a lot to talk about. I'll let the colonel come up and visit you at your lab on Mayber on Lake Ontario. Well, I put it off. In 1962, I decided to go up. I called up, and they told me Mr. Smith died of cancer, and I never really got to go to his laboratory. But he gave us a piece of metal that he took from a flying saucer.
You exchanged, didn't you?
We exchanged, and he brought ours back later.
I was going to ask you one last thing. If you only had a moment to speak in open congressional hearings to discuss what happened 50 years ago, what would you say?
I say it happened, and I'd add on to that. Give us information to the young people of the world in this country. They want to hear it. They want it. Give it to them. Don't hide it and tell lies and make stories. They're not stupid. They're not young men that'll panic. In fact, my own nephew was the research director of DACO Corporation. He tells me, he says, Uncle Phil, why don't they tell us the truth? We're not going to panic and pull our hair out. And one good example of this, which I always tell, to prove this point, that the young people will want it and they're not going to panic, they want to hear this. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this. Even my own grandchildren now will see it. And I always prove it this way. I commanded a battalion of 1,500 men, combat battalion. Average age of my soldiers was 19 and a half years old. I told my exec one day, my God, Maine, we're sending babies into battle. And these kids, they fought the greatest armies in the world. They didn't run, they didn't panic. They stood there and fought. And why do you think they'll panic? They wanted this information. They deserve it. It's their information. It doesn't belong to the Army or the Department of Defense. It's theirs. If it's classified, take the classification off and give it to them. Now here, there's really nothing here classified. After 35 years, there's nothing classified. And what I lived through, in fact, Project Horizon, that's in here, military colony, I declassified that myself under the general's authority. It was secret. I can give it to the public now. I declassified the thing. And in fact, I even gave a copy of that to Senator Glenn. I even gave a copy to Senator Thurman. This is only 50 pages in here. It's really 310 pages long.
And
Who's in control of it now? I mean, who's covering it up now? I mean, is there any one organization?
Look,
that-
I always say this. Now, here's what I say. The government is so big and so vast that if you leave it alone, it'll cover itself up. When I testified in front of missing prisoners of war in front of Congress, the Senate, and later, not too long ago, in front of the House. And they asked me a question like this, and I told them, look, you know, it amazes me when a Scowcroft, a General Scowcroft, and a Kissinger can come up here in front of you, gentlemen, and say there's no information there. I sent it myself from Tokyo over teleconference over a 2-year period. How can they say that? And all the families were sitting there, and they wanted to hear this, see. Later on, we searched for it, we found it. It had fallen through the cracks. The politicians didn't care. They want their own little bailiwick, their own little ego, and do their own little job and get in the newspapers. If a prisoner of war missing from families, they don't care. And I brought this out when I testified. And the cover-up happens like that sometimes with nobody doing anything. It'll cover itself up and fall through the cracks, as I put it. And we never trusted CIA because in my day, Stalin gave orders to get to this information that came out of Roswell to some of his top scientists and agents. That order went out. And we knew that. In the special intelligence that I was in the Pentagon, which was very closely held, KGB trying to penetrate that, but they never did. And we knew that Stalin, they send agents out all over this area here to try to get information on Roswell. And yet we stood back like fools and said it didn't exist, it was a weather balloon. They didn't think it was a weather balloon because they had indication that this has happened. Well, you remember, you see a picture in here when it's myself, General Trudeau O'Connor, and Mr. Fedai. Fedai was a good friend of mine, Library of Congress, spoke fluent Russian. He was going to Russia. This man here. So I gave him a list of questions. Ask your KGB general friend these questions. So he took them, and he came back, and he was laughing. He said, I gave the questions to the general, and he looked at me. He said, I know what you want. And it says it right here. He says, are you trying to get me killed?
By the way, that was only 2 years.
Yeah, this was only 2 years ago. Are you trying to get me killed? And he died, unfortunately. I called his wife one day. She's the voice of America, speaks fluent. I thought, Tina, in Victor's memory, if I go to Moscow, will you go with me as my interpreter? She said, yes, because of Victor, I'll go with you. Because he was going to be my interpreter. See? Well, I got a girl here from Italy. She was fascinated. She heard things that she never, she's going to take them back with her, insisted I come over there. See, I was just during World War II, I was Chief of Security and Intelligence of the Rome Area Command. And they know me pretty well. The countries in Europe are taking this very serious. They're not like us here. They're not going to put out stories that there were dummies came out of the air or people with big heads. Those people are a little more serious about this than we are. But around here, geez, I'm even surprised to see the reaction from these people. Because somebody like me has never been out like this, you know, and after being in the military, you don't go out and give interviews and write books and things like that. Because when we gave the information out, we gave it out and insisted they take the patents. But also we put a little bit of a requirement on there. Requirement, feed it back to us for the competitive edge of the Army. Take the patents, make all the money you want, but give it to the American people and give it to the world. The Japanese, they interviewed me, and I told them when we put the integrated circuit out, we also gave it to you.
And just the last thing, and then I'm out of here. Are you prepared to get up in front of Congress, open congressional hearings, and testify?
I've testified in front of 6 congressional committees. If they want me to, providing it's serious, and they're not going to put it in the archives and just put it away. And when I went to Robert Kennedy, this is a provision I put on, I would testify if I went 4 years to the White House, that something is done with it, not just Congress sitting up there for publicity purpose. I'll go any time they want to. There's no hitch on me. And I'll tell them anything they want, providing they're serious. I won't go up there to help a senator or congressman get elected. I won't testify. In fact, to tell you what happened in the years before, I testified in 1962 on my 4 years at the White House. And show you how, they send a man out my home to see me. I lived in Arlington, Virginia. I told him, no, I won't testify. Why? Because I testify. I take all the risks, and you print a document and put it in the file and it just stays up there, nothing doing. So about a week later, the council calls me, and I was still in uniform. I told him, I'm coming up on Capitol Hill. I stopped in his office, sat down. He's a big, gruff man. And he said, I want you to. I told him, no, I told your assistant. No. He said, Colonel, I'll subpoena you. So I looked at him, and he was a big, gruff man. I told him, go ahead, subpoena me. Get 100 subpoenas, but you're not going to make me talk if I don't want to. And he started to laugh. I figured, what's the matter? Laughing? He said, they told me you'd say that.